The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed with their usual tired hum, casting everything in that peculiar shade of yellow that made even the freshest coffee look like it had been sitting for hours. Elena Volkov wiped down the same section of counter for the third time, her shoulders aching from a double shift that had started at 5 in the morning and wouldn't end until well past midnight. Her reflection in the chrome napkin dispenser showed dark circles under her eyes, hair escaping from its practical bun. The navy blue uniform that had seen better days but was still the cleanest thing she owned. 26 years old and already feeling ancient, held together by caffeine, determination, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that had become her normal. Outside the streaked windows of Rosie's diner, Brooklyn moved through another November evening. Headlights cut through early darkness. People hurried past with collars turned up against the cold, and somewhere a car alarm sang its pointless song to an indifferent city. Elena checked her phone during a rare lull. 2 text messages from her landlord about overdue rent. One reminder about her grandmother's medication refill that cost more than she made in a week, and a notification that her student loan payment had bounced again. She deleted them all without reading past the first line. Some problems didn't get smaller by looking at them. "Order up, sweetheart," Tommy called from the kitchen, his voice rough from 40 years of cigarettes and grease smoke. Elena grabbed the plates, meatloaf special, extra gravy, side of depression, and delivered them to table 6 with a smile that had stopped reaching her eyes somewhere around her 3rd year of serving food to people who didn't see her. The diner door chimed. She glanced up out of habit, already reaching for a menu, and froze. The man who entered didn't belong here. That was her first thought, immediate and certain. He wore wealth like a second skin, a charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it might have been sewn onto his body, shoes that cost more than her monthly rent, a watch that caught the light with the particular gleam of something seriously expensive. But it wasn't the clothes that made people's conversations stutter and die. It was the way he moved, the absolute certainty in every step. The kind of presence that made you understand without being told that this man was used to people getting out of his way. 2 men flanked him at a careful distance. Not bodyguards exactly, more like shadows with shoulders. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. The man's eyes swept the diner with the methodical attention of someone cataloging exits, threats, and weaknesses. When his gaze landed on Elena, something flickered across his face. Curiosity, maybe, or the kind of interest a collector shows when spotting something unexpected. "Booth in the back," he said. His voice carried a faint accent that Elena recognized immediately, the familiar cadence making something in her chest tighten. Russian. Not heavy, but there. Unmistakable if you knew what to listen for. She grabbed a menu and led him to the corner booth, feeling his attention on her like physical weight. He didn't sit immediately. Instead, he studied the cracked vinyl, the table with its decades of knife-carved initials, the window that overlooked the dumpsters behind the Chinese restaurant next door. "Coffee," he said, finally sliding into the seat that faced the entire diner. "Black." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Something about him set every instinct on edge. Not fear exactly, but recognition of danger the way you might recognize the smell of gas before you see the flame. She was pouring his coffee when she heard it. A child crying. Not the angry tantrum of a kid denied something. This was the sound of genuine distress, hiccuping sobs that spoke of fear and confusion. Elena turned. Near the entrance, partially hidden behind one of the man's companions, stood a small boy. He couldn't have been more than 5, with dark curls and enormous brown eyes swimming with tears. He wore a coat that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe, tiny dress shoes that seemed absurd on someone so small, and an expression of absolute desolation. The bodyguard looked uncomfortable, hands hovering uselessly near the crying child without actually touching him. The few other customers in the diner pretended not to notice that particular New York skill of selective blindness. But Elena noticed. She always noticed children. She set down the coffee pot and crossed to the entrance, kneeling so she was eye level with the boy. His crying intensified when she approached, small shoulders shaking. And then, without thinking, Elena spoke in Russian, the language of her grandmother's bedtime stories, of whispered prayers and old songs. Mili malchik, что случилось? Sweet boy, what happened? The effect was immediate. The child's crying stuttered to a halt. He stared at her with those enormous eyes, shock replacing tears. Behind her, Elena heard the scrape of the booth bench. Footsteps. Fast. Где tvoya mama? Where is your mama? Elena asked gently, reaching out slowly to wipe a tear from the boy's cheek with her thumb. Mama niet, the boy whispered, fresh tears spilling over. Mama's not here. His tiny hand reached out, fingers closing around Elena's wrist with surprising strength. Ona na nebiesa. She's in heaven. Elena's heart cracked. She'd been maybe 7 when her own mother died, old enough to understand loss but too young to process it. She recognized that particular kind of grief in the boy's eyes, the bewildered pain of someone still waiting for a person who would never come back. I'm sorry, she whispered in Russian, pulling the boy gently into her arms. He came willingly, burying his face against her shoulder, small body shaking with sobs that seemed too big for someone so little. She was stroking his hair, murmuring soft reassurances in her grandmother's language when a shadow fell over them both. Elena looked up. The man from the booth stood over them, and his expression had transformed entirely. The cold assessment was gone, replaced by something raw and unguarded. He stared at his son in Elena's arms, at the way the boy clung to her, and his jaw worked like he was trying to swallow something sharp. Nikolai, he said softly, the boy's name. The child lifted his head, registering his father's presence without letting go of Elena. Papa, ona govorit kak mama. Papa, she talks like mama. Elena saw it then, the way the man's composure cracked, just for a second. Pain, grief, something that looked like hope. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, his expression smoothing back into careful neutrality, but she'd seen it, the human underneath the intimidating exterior. You speak Russian, he observed, his accent thickening slightly. It wasn't a question. Elena nodded, gently disentangling herself from Nikolai's grip so she could stand. The boy immediately attached himself to her leg, arms wrapped around her knee. My grandmother was from Moscow, she explained, feeling suddenly self-conscious in her stained uniform with coffee on her sleeve. She raised me. It was our language. The man studied her with that same intense focus, but different now. Not calculating her threat level, trying to understand something he hadn't expected to find in a Brooklyn diner at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Your name, he said, a command dressed as a request. Elena. She hesitated, then added, Volkov. Something shifted in his expression. Volkov, he repeated, the syllables familiar in his mouth. Your grandmother's name? My mother's. My father was American, but... Elena shrugged. He left before I was born. Grandmother gave me her name instead. Nikolai tugged at her apron, saying something in rapid Russian about being hungry, and did she know about the magical pancakes? Elena couldn't help smiling, translating his request for his father, who watched this exchange with the strangest expression. He says he wants pancakes, Elena reported. Apparently they're magical? His mother used to... The man stopped, jaw tightening. She made them for him. Sunday mornings. The grief in those simple words hit Elena harder than expected. She looked down at Nikolai, who stared up at her with hope written across his small face, and made a decision that would change everything. "I make pretty good pancakes," she offered quietly. "Not magical maybe, but decent." The man's eyes met hers, and she saw him wrestle with something. Suspicion, maybe, or the fear of letting his son hope for something that might disappear. But Nikolai had already decided, dragging Elena toward the counter with surprising strength for someone so small. "Pojaluista." "Papa!" "Please, Papa." "Dmitri," the man said abruptly. "My name is Dmitri Volkov." He let the surname hang in the air, watching her reaction. Elena blinked. "Volkov? That's—" "Yes," he confirmed. "A coincidence, or perhaps not." His gaze intensified. "Your grandmother. Where in Moscow?" "Arbat district," Elena answered automatically. "She left in '92, during—" "The collapse," Dmitri finished. His expression had gone very still. "Arbat? Near the old cathedral?" Elena nodded slowly, something cold forming in her stomach. "You're not just—" She glanced at the bodyguards, at the expensive suit, at the way everyone in the diner was very carefully not looking at them. "You're not just Russian." "No," Dmitri agreed softly. "I am not just Russian." The diner suddenly felt smaller. Elena became acutely aware of how close he was standing, of the leashed power in his stillness, of the fact that this man who clearly controlled things she didn't want to think about was watching her comfort his son with an expression that made her chest tight. Nikolai, oblivious to the tension, had climbed onto a counter stool and was explaining in detail exactly how magical pancakes should be made, with chocolate chips arranged like stars and syrup that formed rivers. Tommy appeared from the kitchen, took one look at Dmitri and his men, and very quietly said, "Elena, sweetheart, you need any—" "We're fine, Tommy," Elena assured him, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. "Just making some pancakes for—" She gestured at Nikolai. "Right," Tommy said slowly. "Pancakes?" "Sure." He retreated to the kitchen, but she saw him reach for the phone. Whether to call the police or someone else, she wasn't certain. Elena turned to the grill, very aware of Dmitri taking the stool beside his son, watching her hands as she prepared the batter. Nikolai kept up a running commentary in Russian about his day, preschool, the park, how his favorite stuffed animal had gotten lost and been found again. She listened while she cooked, responding in the language that felt more natural than English ever had, making the pancakes exactly as Nikolai described, with a precision that made the boy's face light up. When she slid the plate in front of him, Nikolai actually gasped. "Kak mama delala!" Like Mama made. Dimitri's hand tightened on the counter, knuckles white. Elena pretended not to notice, but she saw the way he watched his son eat, with desperate hope in his eyes, the kind that comes from watching someone you love start to come back to life. "How long?" Dmitri asked quietly, his voice pitched below his son's chatter. "Since your grandmother passed?" 2 years, Elena answered, wiping down the counter that didn't need wiping. "Cancer. It was—" She stopped, not trusting her voice. "Quick or slow?" The question surprised her with its bluntness. "Slow," she admitted. 10 months from diagnosis to—" She didn't finish. "I didn't need to." Dmitri nodded slowly. "Natalia, my wife, 18 months. She fought." His accent thickened. "She fought so hard." They stood in silence, broken only by Nikolai's happy eating sounds. "He doesn't speak," Dmitri said finally. "English. Since she died 18 months ago. The doctors say trauma, selective mutism. He understands, but he won't." He gestured helplessly. "Only Russian. Only what she gave him." Elena understood immediately. The boy's language had become his lifeline to his mother, the last thing she'd left him that couldn't be taken away. "But he spoke to you," Dmitri continued, his gaze intense. "More than he's said to anyone in months." I reminded him of her, Elena said softly. The language. It made him feel safe. Yes. Dmitri's eyes held hers. It did. The diner door chimed. One of Dmitri's men leaned in, said something low and urgent in Russian. Something about time and movement and needing to go. Dmitri stood, his movement reluctant. He reached for his son, but Nikolai had wrapped his arms around Elena's waist, face pressed against her apron. Niet, the boy said firmly. Я хочу оставаться. I want to stay. Nikolai? Dmitri started, but his son shook his head stubbornly. Elena knelt, gently turning the boy to face her. You have to go home, she said in Russian. But maybe. She looked up at Dmitri, seeing something in his expression that made her pulse quicken. Maybe you can come back? Tomorrow, Dmitri said immediately. Not a question, a statement. What time do you work? I'm here from 5 a.m. until midnight, Elena admitted. Every day except... Every day? Dmitri's expression darkened. That's illegal. Elena laughed without humor. So is a lot of things. I need the money. Something passed across Dmitri's face. Calculation, decision, the look of a man solving a problem. Tomorrow, he repeated. 6 p.m. We'll come for dinner. It's a diner, Elena pointed out. Not really dinner material. It has you, Dmitri said simply. That makes it dinner material. Before Elena could process that, he'd lifted Nikolai into his arms. The boy was protesting in rapid Russian, reaching for Elena with desperate hands. Obishayu, Elena promised, taking Nikolai's small hand and squeezing gently. I promise. I'll be here tomorrow. Magical pancakes again? Yes? Nikolai nodded, tears threatening but held back by hope. He said something that made Dmitri's expression soften, asking if Elena could be his new friend. Yes, Elena assured him. I can be your friend. As Dmitri carried his son toward the door, he paused, turning back. Your rent, he said quietly. How much behind? Elena's spine stiffened. That's not your... How much? 3 months, she admitted, hating the heat in her cheeks. But I'm working it out. I don't need... Tomorrow, Dmitri interrupted. 6 p.m. We discuss... arrangements. Then he was gone, his men flowing around him like water, and Elena was left standing in the fluorescent light with the smell of pancakes and the memory of a little boy who spoke her grandmother's language. Tommy emerged from the kitchen, face pale. Elena, do you know who that was? She shook her head, though something in her stomach said she didn't want to know. Dmitri Volkov, Tommy whispered. They call him the Wolf of Brighton Beach. Tommy stopped, glancing around the suddenly empty diner. He's the Russian Mafia, sweetheart, and he just looked at you like you're something he's decided to keep. Elena's hands trembled as she cleared Nikolai's plate. The boy had eaten everything, arranged the last chocolate chips into a smiley face. Outside, a black Mercedes with tinted windows pulled away from the curb, taking them back to whatever world they inhabited, when they weren't making her chest feel tight and her grandmother's language feel like home. She didn't sleep that night, just lay in her studio apartment with its broken heater and peeling paint, staring at the ceiling and replaying the way Dmitri had said arrangements, like he was negotiating a business deal instead of discussing whether she'd see his son again. Her phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Unknown number. Your landlord will receive payment in full tomorrow. Consider it an advance on future work. We will discuss terms at dinner. Divi Elena stared at the message until her vision blurred. She should be angry, should refuse charity from a man she'd just met, especially one Tommy claimed ran criminal enterprises. Should definitely not feel this flutter of something warm and dangerous in her chest. But all she could think about was a little boy's arms around her waist and the way his father's eyes had gone soft when Nikolai laughed. She typed and deleted 5 responses before finally settling on, "I don't accept money from strangers." The reply came immediately. "Good. Tomorrow we will become not strangers. 6 p.m. Don't make me send my men to carry you to the diner." Elena almost smiled despite herself. Almost. At 5 a.m., she dragged herself to work to find an envelope taped to the diner's door. Inside, a cashier's check for $6,000 was made out to her landlord. No note, no explanation, just the kind of money that solved problems she'd been drowning in for months. And underneath, written in precise Cyrillic script on heavy cardstock, "For the woman who made my son smile. This is not charity. This is gratitude. You have given me something priceless. Allow me to remove obstacles so you might do it again." Elena pressed the card against her chest, breathing hard. She knew this was dangerous, knew she should run far and fast from whatever this was becoming. But that night, when 6 p.m. arrived and the diner door chimed, she looked up with her heart already racing. Dmitri stood in the doorway with Nikolai on his shoulders, and the little boy's face split into a grin when he saw her. "Elena," he called in Russian, "I told Papa you'd be here. I told him." And as father and son made their way to their booth, the one Dmitri had already claimed as his, she realized. Elena understood that she'd already made her choice the moment she'd knelt beside a crying boy and spoken her grandmother's language. Some bridges, once crossed, didn't allow you to return to where you'd been before. She was counting on it. The weeks that followed developed a rhythm that felt both natural and impossible. Dmitri and Nikolai came to the diner every evening at 6, always taking the same corner booth, always ordering dinner that Nikolai barely touched because he was too busy talking to Elena in the rapid Russian of a child who'd finally found someone who understood him. Elena learned things in pieces. Nikolai loved dinosaurs and astronomy. He slept with a stuffed wolf named Boris. He had nightmares about his mama disappearing and wouldn't sleep unless every light in his room was on. He thought his papa was the strongest man in the world, but also the saddest. Dmitri spoke less, but watched more. Elena felt his attention like a physical thing, the way his eyes tracked her movements across the diner, how he listened when she and Nikolai laughed together, the almost imperceptible softening of his expression when she brushed Nikolai's hair back from his forehead with casual affection. "You're good with him," Dmitri observed one evening after Nikolai had fallen asleep in the booth, head pillowed on his father's jacket. Elena wiped down the neighboring table, very aware of the late hour and the fact that Tommy had already left, trusting her to lock up. The diner was empty except for the 3 of them and the hum of the refrigerator. "He's easy to be good with," she replied quietly, studying the sleeping child's peaceful face. "He just needs you," Dmitri finished. "He needs you." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Elena wasn't ready to examine. She focused on the table, scrubbing at a spot that had been there for years. "I've been thinking," Dmitri continued, his voice carrying that careful control that meant he was about to say something significant. "Nikolai needs stability, structure, someone who understands his language and his loss." "He has you," Elena pointed out, though something in her chest was already tightening with anticipation. "I have business," Dmitri said bluntly, "responsibilities that take me away, sometimes for days. Nikolai stays with my housekeeper, Mrs. Orlova. She's kind, competent, but—" He gestured helplessly. "She's 73. She feeds him, makes sure he's safe, but she doesn't—" "Speak to his heart," Elena supplied softly. Dmitri's eyes met hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Yes," he said. "Exactly that." Elena set down her cloth, sensing what was coming, and not sure whether to hope for it or fear it. "I want to hire you," Dmitri said, "full-time, to care for Nikolai, teach him, help him process his grief, be the bridge between his mother's world and the one he has to live in now." The offer should have been simple. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something vast and dangerous. Elena gripped the back of a chair, knuckles white. "I have responsibilities," she said. "My grandmother." "Your grandmother's medications cost $1,200 monthly," Dmitri interrupted. "Her assisted living facility charges $3,500. You're 26 years old, working 16-hour days, drowning in debt from a degree you never finished because you had to care for her." He leaned forward slightly. "I know these things, Elena. I know everything." She should have been angry at the invasion of privacy. Instead, she felt exposed, seen in a way that was both terrifying and strangely relieving. "I'm offering you $60,000 annually," Dmitri continued, "plus benefits, housing if you want it, and all medical expenses for your grandmother covered. You work Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Weekends off, unless there's an emergency." Elena's head spun. 60,000 was more than she made in 2 years at the diner. It was graduation from survival mode to actually living. It was, "Why?" she whispered. "This is too much for a nanny." Dmitri stood slowly, moving around the booth to stand in front of her. Not too close, but close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Because you're not a nanny," he said quietly. "You're the first person since Natalia died who made my son laugh. You speak his language, not just Russian, but the language of loss." His jaw tightened. "That's not something I can buy, but I can remove the obstacles that prevent you from giving it freely." "And if I say no?" Something flickered in Dmitri's eyes. "Then we continue as we are. Dinner at 6. Your choice. Always your choice." He paused. "But Nikolai will still need you, and I think perhaps you need him too." That was the truth that made Elena's throat tight. These weeks with Nikolai had filled something in her she hadn't known was empty. The joy of hearing her grandmother's language spoken by someone who loved it. The satisfaction of watching a grieving child slowly start to heal. The feeling of mattering to someone in a way that went beyond just serving them food. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. "I need to think about it," Elena said finally. Dmitri nodded, unsurprised. He gathered his sleeping son into his arms with practiced ease, Nikolai's head settling naturally against his shoulder. "Take your time," he said. "But Elena?" He paused at the door. "Whatever you decide, know that you've already changed our lives. That doesn't come with obligations. It comes with my gratitude." After they left, Elena found an envelope on the table. Inside, a phone. Expensive, new, with a single number programmed. A note in Cyrillic script. For emergencies, or questions, or anything at all. She held the phone for a long time, feeling the weight of what accepting it would mean. At 2 a.m. she texted, "I have questions." The response came within seconds. "Ask them." "What kind of business are you in?" A longer pause this time. Then, "The kind that keeps me awake at night worrying about Nikolai's safety. The kind that makes me need someone I can trust absolutely with the most important thing in my world." Elena stared at the non-answer that was somehow an answer. "That's not reassuring. It's honest. Would you prefer I lie?" She considered that. "No." "Good. Honesty is the only thing I can promise you. Everything else is complicated." "How complicated?" "Complicated enough that you should be afraid. Smart enough that I'll understand if you are." Elena set the phone down, pulse racing. She should be afraid. She was afraid. But not of Dmitri exactly. More of how much she wanted to say yes. The idea of spending her days with Nikolai, helping him heal, filled her with a sense of purpose she'd been missing since her grandmother died. Her phone buzzed again. Nikolai asked if you'll come to his birthday party next week. He wants magical pancakes and for you to meet Boris. Despite everything, Elena smiled. Boris? The wolf. He's very important, second only to you in Nikolai's current affections. What about you? Elena typed before she could stop herself. Where do you rank? The pause stretched longer this time. I'm his father. I keep him safe, provide for him, love him more than my own life. But I can't give him what you give him. The feeling that the world still has kindness in it. Elena's eyes burned. She typed quickly, before fear could stop her. I'll come to the party, and I'll think about the job. Really think about it. That's all I ask. Sleep well, Elena Volkov. You too, Dmitri Volkov. I haven't slept well in 18 months, but knowing Nikolai will see you tomorrow helps. Elena held the phone against her chest, breathing hard. She was in trouble. Deep, complicated, dangerous trouble. And part of her was already looking forward to it. The birthday party was nothing like Elena expected. She'd imagined something small, maybe Nikolai, Dmitri, Mrs. Orlova. Instead, she arrived at an address in Brighton Beach to find a mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from Imperial Russia, all wrought iron gates and stone walls topped with cameras that tracked her approach with predatory focus. A man built like a concrete wall opened the gate before she could knock. He looked her up and down with the cold assessment of security personnel everywhere, then spoke into a radio in rapid Russian. Miss Volkov is here, he reported. Then to her. Mr. Volkov is expecting you. This way. Elena followed him up a curved driveway lined with bare trees, their branches etched against the gray November sky. The house loomed larger as they approached. Beautiful in a stern, unforgiving way, more fortress than home. The door opened before they reached it. Nikolai burst out. Running down the steps with Boris the wolf clutched in one hand. Elena, Elena, you came. He crashed into her legs, arms wrapping tight around her knees. Papa said you would, but I was worried maybe you changed your mind and... I promised. Elena interrupted gently, kneeling to hug him properly. I don't break promises to my friends. Nikolai beamed, then grabbed her hand. Come see? Papa got me a real telescope and Mrs. Orlova made honey cake and there's... Nikolai. Dmitri's voice carried easily from the doorway, warm with amusement. Let her breathe. Elena looked up to find him silhouetted against the light from inside, wearing dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made him look less like a crime lord and more like someone's devastatingly attractive. She cut that thought off hard. Sorry, Papa, Nikolai said, not sounding sorry at all as he tugged Elena up the steps. But she has to see everything right now, because it's my birthday and she's here and you're very excited, Dmitri finished, his eyes meeting Elena's over his son's head. Something in his expression made her breath catch. Pleasure, maybe, or relief that she'd actually come. Hello, Elena. Hello, she managed, very aware of how out of place she looked in her simple dress and worn coat among all this expensive elegance. If Dmitri noticed her discomfort, he didn't show it. Instead, he ushered them inside with one hand resting lightly on Nikolai's shoulder, the gesture both protective and proud. The interior took Elena's breath away. She'd expected ostentatious wealth, gold fixtures and marble everything. Instead, she found warmth. Rich wood paneling, Persian rugs in deep jewel tones, bookshelves that climbed to the ceiling filled with volumes in both English and Russian. Photographs everywhere. Nikolai as a baby, a beautiful woman with kind eyes who had to be Natalia, family moments frozen in silver frames. Mama loved books, Nikolai explained, following her gaze. Papa keeps them exactly how she left them. He says it helps him remember her voice. Elena's chest tightened. She looked at Dmitri, found him watching her with an expression that was almost vulnerable. She read to him every night. He said quietly. Pushkin, Tolstoy, even Dostoevsky, though he was too young to understand. She said the language mattered more than comprehension. She was right, Elena replied, running her fingers along the spine of Anna Karenina. Language carries the soul. My grandmother believed that too. They stood in shared understanding, the moment stretching between them like something fragile and important, until Nikolai grabbed Elena's hand again. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The party's in the back, come on! The backyard had been transformed into a child's wonderland, tables laden with food, Russian delicacies Elena recognized from her grandmother's kitchen, along with American favorites. Decorations in deep blue and silver, Nikolai's favorite colors, and people. So many people. Elena recognized types immediately. Business associates in expensive suits, their eyes too hard for their smiles. Women dripping with jewelry, watching her with calculating interest. Men who stood too straight, scanned too carefully. Security. Definitely security. And in the corner, a small group of children from what Elena guessed was Nikolai's preschool, supervised by a nervous-looking teacher who seemed very aware of her surroundings. Mrs. Orlova, Nikolai called, dragging Elena toward an elderly woman with silver hair and shrewd eyes. This is Elena, the one I told you about. Mrs. Orlova studied Elena with the thoroughness of someone who'd spent decades evaluating people. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "So you're the one," she said in accented English, "the magical pancake maker." "Guilty," Elena admitted, liking the woman immediately. "Good," Mrs. Orlova declared. "This house needs magic, has been too sad for too long." She glanced at Dmitri, who'd been intercepted by one of his business associates. Both of them. Too much sadness. Elena spent the next hour being introduced to people whose names she immediately forgot, very aware of the weight of their attention. The women assessed her clothes, her background, her relationship to Dmitri and Nikolai. The men catalogued her as either irrelevant or potentially useful. Everyone seemed curious about the woman who'd gotten inside the wolf's defenses. She was helping Nikolai open presents when it happened. A man arrived late, flanked by his own security. He was older than Dmitri, with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The temperature in the backyard dropped perceptibly. Conversations faltered. Dmitri's men shifted positions subtly, creating a barrier between the newcomer and Nikolai, without appearing to move at all. Dmitri stood slowly from where he'd been kneeling beside his son, his expression carefully neutral. "Konstantin," he said, voice flat. "This is a children's party." "And I've brought a gift for the birthday boy," Konstantin replied smoothly, his Russian accent thicker than Dmitri's. He held out an elaborately wrapped box. "May I?" It wasn't really a question. Elena watched Dmitri's jaw tighten, saw the calculation behind his eyes as he weighed options. Finally, he nodded once. Konstantin approached, and Elena instinctively pulled Nikolai closer. The older man's eyes flickered to her, interest sharpening. "And who is this?" he asked, switching to English. "You've been keeping secrets, Dmitri." "Elena is Nikolai's friend," Dmitri said, moving to stand between them with casual precision. Nothing more. The dismissal should have stung. Instead, Elena understood it for what it was. Protection. Making her seem unimportant, not worth Konstantin's attention. "Just a friend," Konstantin repeated, his smile widening as he handed the gift to Nikolai. "How nice. The wolf making friends. Your late wife would be pleased." The mention of Natalia made Dmitri's hands clench. "Thank you for the gift," he said, his tone making it clear that Konstantin's presence was no longer welcome. "I'm sure Nikolai appreciates it." Konstantin held his ground for a beat longer, his gaze moving between Dmitri, Elena, and Nikolai, with calculating interest. Then he smiled, tipped an imaginary hat, and left with his security flowing around him like dark water. The party resumed, but the atmosphere had changed. Dmitri's men were more alert, their attention constantly scanning. Mrs. Orlova appeared at Elena's elbow with a glass of something amber. "Drink," she ordered. "You look pale." Elena sipped, brandy, smooth and burning. "Who was that?" "Konstantin Sokolov," Mrs. Orlova said quietly. "Dmitri's biggest rival. They've been competitors for many years." "Competitors in what?" Mrs. Orlova's eyes met hers. "In everything that matters in this world, child. Power, territory, control." She paused. "Konstantin's wife died young too. He understands grief. But unlike Mr. Volkov, he let it make him cruel." Elena watched Dmitri kneel beside Nikolai again, helping him open the gift, a beautiful antique telescope, the kind that probably cost thousands. Nikolai's delight was genuine, but Dmitri's expression remained guarded. "Why did he really come?" Elena asked. "To see what Dmitri values," Mrs. Orlova replied, "to find weaknesses. And today," she looked at Elena meaningfully, "I think he found one." The words settled in Elena's stomach like cold stones. She'd been so focused on Nikolai, on the innocent joy of helping a child heal, that she hadn't considered the larger implications, the danger. As if sensing her thoughts, Dmitri looked up, his eyes finding hers across the yard. Even from a distance, she could see the apology in them, the warning. "This is my world," his expression said, "and I just pulled you into it." Elena lifted her chin, meeting his gaze steadily. She wasn't sure what her expression conveyed, but whatever it was made Dmitri's eyes narrow slightly, something that might have been respect flickering across his face. The party continued. Nikolai blew out candles, opened more presents, played with the other children with the kind of joy that made Elena's heart swell. But she was aware now of the undercurrents, the careful watching, the weight of being noticed by people who noticed everything. When the guests finally left and the sun began to set, Elena helped Mrs. Orlova clean up while Dmitri put an exhausted Nikolai down for a nap. The house felt different with just the staff, quieter, more like a home than a fortress. "You should go," Mrs. Orlova said gently, handing Elena her coat. "Before it gets dark. Mr. Volkov's driver will take you." "I can take the subway." "No." Dmitri's voice came from the doorway. "You can't." "Not anymore." Elena turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, tie loosened, looking tired in a way that made him seem more human. "What does that mean?" "It means Konstantin noticed you," Dmitri said bluntly. "It means you're now part of the equation he's calculating." "Nikolai wanted me at his party," Elena pointed out. "I wanted you at his party," Dmitri corrected quietly. Nikolai asked. "I could have said no. Should have said no. But He gestured helplessly. "I wanted to see you here, in our home, part of our life." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Elena's pulse quickened. "So what happens now?" she asked. Dmitri straightened and she saw the shift, the personal receding, the businessman emerging. "Now we make it official. You accept the position I offered. You move into the guest house on the property, you're protected." "That sounds like an order, not an offer." "It's a necessity," Dmitri said, his voice hardening with something that sounded like fear. "Konstantin will have you followed. He'll dig into your life, find pressure points. Your grandmother, your debts, anyone you care about, all of it becomes leverage." Elena's hands trembled. She thought of her grandmother in the assisted living facility, vulnerable and trusting. "You're scaring me." "Good," Dmitri said bluntly. "Fear keeps you alert, keeps you safe." He moved closer, stopping just within reach. "I'm sorry, Elena. I should have been more careful, should have kept more distance. But Nikolai needed you, and He stopped, something raw flashing in his eyes. I was grateful. I let that gratitude blind me to the danger. What danger exactly? Elena asked, needing to hear it spelled out. What does Konstantin want? To hurt me, Dmitri said simply. Any way he can. And now he knows that hurting you would accomplish that goal. She mattered to Dmitri, enough that Konstantin would exploit it. I need to think, she said, though thinking felt impossible with him standing so close, with the memory of Konstantin's calculating smile fresh in her mind. Think here, Dmitri urged, in the guest house, with security. Please. Please break through her resistance. Elena had never heard him use that word before. It felt like surrender. Just for tonight, she agreed. To clear my head. Relief flashed across Dmitri's face. Thank you. He pulled out his phone, typed quickly. Your things will be collected from your apartment. Your grandmother will have additional security posted at her facility, discreetly. You won't be alone. I don't know if that's comforting or terrifying. Both, Dmitri said honestly. It should be both. The guest house was actually a small cottage at the edge of the property, hidden behind tall hedges and equipped with its own security system. Inside, it was cozy. Fireplace, kitchenette, bedroom with an ensuite bath. Someone had already stocked the refrigerator and left fresh flowers on the table. Elena stood at the window, watching. The main house where lights glowed warm in Nikolai's bedroom. She could see Dmitri's silhouette moving past the window, probably checking on his sleeping son one more time. Her phone buzzed, a text from the number Dmitri had given her. Are you comfortable? She typed back. Physically, yes. Emotionally, no. Fair. Would it help to talk? Would it help you to be honest about what you really do? The pause stretched long enough that Elena thought he might not answer. Then, I manage imports and exports. Some legal, some less so. I have business interests in shipping, real estate, and various other ventures. I work with people who don't always follow conventional rules. And yes, sometimes that means danger. Elena stared at the admission. You're a criminal. I'm a businessman operating in gray areas. I don't deal in drugs, human trafficking, or anything that harms innocents. I have lines I don't cross. But yes, by legal definition, some of what I do qualifies as criminal. Why tell me this? Because you asked for honesty, and because you deserve to make your decision about Nikolai with full information. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, phone clenched in her hand. Everything was moving too fast. A week ago, her biggest problem was making rent. Now she was living in a cottage on a crime lord's property, debating whether to become the nanny to his son, targeted by his rivals because she'd shown kindness to a crying child. I'm scared, she typed. You should be. I'm scared too. Of what? Of how much I care that you're scared. Of what that means. Elena's breath caught. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on. What does it mean? The reply came quickly. It means I'm compromised. It means I'm making decisions based on emotion rather than logic. It means you've become important to me in ways that go beyond what you do for Nikolai. Her heart hammered. Dmitri, I know. Too much. Too fast. I'm sorry. Forget I said it. I can't forget it, then remember it, and know that whatever you decide, I'll respect it. But please, Elena, stay, at least until the danger passes. Let me keep you safe. Elena looked out at the main house again, at the light still glowing in Nikolai's window. She thought about the little boy who'd wrapped his arms around her waist and called her his friend. About the man who read Russian poetry to his son and preserved his dead wife's books exactly as she'd left them. I'll stay, she typed finally, for Nikolai. Thank you. But we need rules, boundaries. Name them. Elena took a deep breath. I'm here for Nikolai, that's all. Whatever else is happening between us, it can't. Not while you're my employer and I'm this vulnerable. The pause was longer this time. Then, agreed. Professional boundaries only. I won't cross them. Promise? I promise to try. But Elena? Yes? Those boundaries exist to protect you from me. Make sure you're also protecting yourself from what you're feeling. Elena set down her phone, pulse racing, because he was right. The danger wasn't just Constantine or rival criminals or the illegal business dealings. The danger was how much she was already starting to care, how natural it had felt to stand beside Dmitri, to be part of Nikolai's life, to imagine this could be home. She fell asleep in the cottage with her phone on the nightstand, the main house visible through her window, and the certain knowledge that she'd just made a decision that would change everything. In the morning, she woke to find a folder on her kitchen table that hadn't been there the night before. Inside, a contract for employment, clearly written, generous beyond belief, with a single clause highlighted in yellow. All decisions regarding the minor child remain subject to employees' judgment and professional opinion. Employers agree to defer to employees on matters of child welfare, education, and emotional well-being. A note in Cyrillic script. You have power here. Use it to keep him safe, even from me if necessary. Elena held the contract, understanding what Dmitri had done. He'd given her authority over the thing he valued most, proof that he trusted her. That this wasn't about control, but about genuinely believing she knew what was best for his son. She signed the contract, and with that signature, Elena Volkov officially became part of the Wolf's world. The next 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Elena arrived at the main house each morning to find Nikolai already awake, waiting by the window with Boris clutched in one hand. They'd have breakfast together. Blini with jam, kasha with honey, the foods of her grandmother's kitchen that made Nikolai's eyes light up with recognition and comfort. Dmitri would join them when his schedule allowed, usually smelling of coffee and expensive cologne, his suits perfectly tailored, his eyes tired but softening when Nikolai laughed at something Elena said. They maintained their boundaries carefully, professional distance, no lingering touches, conversations that stayed focused on Nikolai's progress. But Elena felt the tension anyway, the way Dmitri's gaze would linger on her face when she wasn't looking, how his voice gentled when he said her name, the careful space he maintained between them, as if getting too close might shatter the control they were both desperately maintaining. Nikolai flourished. His English returned in fragments, single words at first, then phrases, finally full sentences. He still preferred Russian with Elena, but the selective mutism was loosening its grip. Dr. Petrov, the child psychologist Dmitri had hired, called it remarkable progress. Whatever you're doing, she told Elena during one of their consultations, keep doing it. He's healing. What Elena was doing was loving him. Simply, completely, the way her grandmother had loved her. With Russian fairy tales and astronomy lessons, with patient answers to endless questions, with the steady presence of someone who wouldn't disappear. Security became routine. The men at the park. The discreet car when she visited her grandmother. Cameras watching every entrance. Then came the morning she found the photograph. It was tucked under the cottage door, slipped there sometime during the night. Black and white, high quality. Elena, walking into her grandmother's facility. The shot taken from across the street, the angle suggesting patience and planning. On the back, written in precise block letters, she looks fragile. It would be such a shame if something happened. Elena's hands shook so badly she dropped the photo. It fluttered to the floor, her grandmother's unknowing smile staring up at her. She was still standing there, frozen, when Dmitri's head of security, a man named Victor, appeared at her door. His expression was grim. Mr. Volkov wants to see you. Now. Dmitri's office was a space Elena had never entered before. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that looked like it had witnessed 1,000 difficult decisions. Maps on the walls. Shipping routes, she realized. Business locations marked with pins. Dmitri stood with his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian that sounded like barely controlled fury. He turned when Victor ushered her in, his expression transforming from cold rage to immediate concern. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then to Victor. "Leave us." When they were alone, Dmitri crossed to her in 3 strides. "Let me see it." Elena handed over the photograph with trembling fingers, watched his jaw tighten as he read the message, watched something dangerous flash in his eyes. "Constantine," he said quietly. "This is his style. Subtle threats, psychological pressure." He set the photo on his desk with careful precision, as if it might explode. "I'm moving your grandmother, today, to a private facility upstate with 24-hour medical care and security that actually knows what they're doing." "She'll be confused," Elena protested. "She barely remembers where she is now. A new place will—" "Keep her alive," Dmitri interrupted, his voice hard. "Elena, this isn't a suggestion. This is me telling you that the woman who raised you is in danger because of your association with me, and I'm taking steps to protect her." The bluntness hurt, but it was also a relief. No more pretending this was safe. "What about Nikolai?" Elena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dmitri's expression softened fractionally. "Nikolai has always been a target. That's why we live like this. The walls, the security, the careful control of who gets close to him." He paused. "But now you're a target too, and that's on me." "I chose to stay," Elena reminded him. "You chose to help a child," Dmitri corrected. "You didn't sign up for this." He gestured at the photograph, at the implied threat. Elena lifted her chin, finding strength she hadn't known she possessed. "Then tell me what I did sign up for." "The truth, Dmitri. All of it." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he moved to a cabinet, withdrew a bottle of vodka and 2 glasses, poured generously. "Sit," he said, handing her a glass, "because this will take a while." The story Dmitri told was one of survival. A boy born in Siberia during the collapse, watching his father drink himself to death and his mother work herself to the grave. A teenager who learned that in the new Russia, the only law that mattered was the law of strength. A young man who built an empire through intelligence, ruthlessness, and the willingness to do what others wouldn't. "I met Natalia in Moscow," Dmitri said, his voice softening. "She was studying literature at university. Sweet, innocent, everything I wasn't." He smiled, the expression painful. "She saw something in me worth saving. I spent 10 years trying to become the man she believed I could be." "Did you?" Elena asked quietly. "Partially," Dmitri admitted. "I pulled back from the worst of it. Focused on legitimate businesses. Built something Nikolai could be proud of one day." His expression hardened. "But men like Constantine don't forget. Don't forgive. They see any weakness as an opportunity." "And Natalia's death?" Dmitri's hand tightened on his glass. "Cancer. Aggressive. Fast. We tried everything. American doctors, experimental treatments, specialists from Europe. Nothing worked." He drained his vodka. "Constantine sent flowers to the funeral. White lilies. Natalia's favorite. It was a message." "What message?" "That he'd been close enough to know her favorites. That he could have acted any time. That even my wife wasn't safe from him." Dmitri's eyes met hers. "I've spent 18 months making sure Nikolai never experiences that kind of loss again. And now I'm the weakness," Elena finished. "Now you're the person Constantine can hurt to hurt me," Dmitri corrected. "It's different." "How?" Dmitri stood, moving to the window that overlooked the grounds where Nikolai played under Mrs. Orlova's watchful eye. "Because Natalia was my wife, my partner, the mother of my child. Hurting her would have destroyed me. He turned, his gaze intense. But you, Elena, you're something I'm just beginning to want. And Konstantin knows that wanting something is the first step to needing it. He'll push, test, see if he can use you to make me weak. The admission hung between them, breaking every boundary they'd established. Dmitri, Elena started. I know, he interrupted. Professional distance, I promised. But I can't protect you if I'm not honest about why you're in danger. He crossed back to her, stopping just out of reach. Konstantin saw me look at you at that party. He saw me position myself between you and him. He saw me care. And now he's going to exploit that. Elena stood, needing to be on equal footing. So what do? We make you boring, Dmitri said. Unimportant. We create distance. Make it clear you're just the nanny, nothing more. You move back to your apartment. We reduce contact to professional minimums. No, Elena interrupted. Dmitri blinked. No? No, Elena repeated firmly, because that's a lie, and Konstantin will see through it. He's not stupid. He's already invested resources in watching me, threatening my grandmother. Backing off now just confirms I matter. Then what do you suggest? Dmitri asked, something that might have been pride flickering in his eyes. Elena took a breath, committing to the insane idea forming in her mind. We do the opposite. We make me so visible, so obviously part of Nikolai's life, that hurting me becomes impossible without massive consequences. We make me, she searched for the word, essential, untouchable. Dmitri studied her intently. You're talking about making yourself an official part of this family. I'm talking about calling Konstantin's bluff, Elena corrected. He's counting on you being afraid of losing me. So we show him I'm not going anywhere, that I'm protected by the same forces that protect Nikolai. That makes you a permanent target. I'm already a target, Elena pointed out. At least this way, I'm a target with an army. Dmitri moved closer, his hand reaching up to touch her face, then stopping just short. You understand what you're proposing? The life you'd be committing to? I understand that Nikolai needs me, Elena said steadily. I understand that your world is dangerous, but you're trying to build something better. And I understand. She paused, gathering courage. I understand that what's happening between us scares me, but running from it won't make it stop. Elena, I'm not asking for promises, she interrupted. I'm not asking you to define this. I'm just saying I choose to stay. Fully. Completely. Whatever that means. Dimitri's control cracked. His hand finally made contact, cupping her face with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the dangerous man he could be. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can I be both? He almost smiled. Then his phone buzzed insistently. He pulled it out, expression darkening as he read the message. What? Elena asked, recognizing danger in the set of his shoulders. Konstantin's made his move, Dmitri said grimly. He's requested a meeting. Neutral ground, tomorrow night. Will you go? I have to, Dmitri said. But you're coming with me. Elena's eyes widened. What? You wanted to be visible? This is how. Dimitri's expression was hard, determined. We go together. We show Konstantin that you're under my protection, that threatening you means war. And if he doesn't care, then we show him the cost, Dmitri said quietly. The restaurant Konstantin chose was ostentatiously neutral, a high-end Italian place in Manhattan where both men had business interests, and neither had complete control. Elena wore a dress Dmitri had sent to the cottage, midnight blue silk that looked expensive and felt like armor. Mrs. Orlova had helped with her hair, pulling it into an elegant updo that revealed the delicate line of her neck. You look like a queen, the older woman said approvingly. Good. Let that snake see what the wolf values. Dmitri appeared at the cottage door in a black suit, his expression unreadable. But when his eyes landed on Elena, something shifted. Heat, appreciation, possession. You look. He stopped, jaw tightening. Beautiful. I look terrified, Elena corrected. Also beautiful, Dmitri said. He offered his arm. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. The drive into Manhattan was silent, except for Victor's occasional updates from the front seat. 3 cars followed them. Security, carefully coordinated. At least 5 more were already at the restaurant, positioned strategically. Remember, Dmitri said as they pulled up to the entrance, you don't speak unless spoken to. You stay beside me. If anything feels wrong, you say the word Boris, and Victor will have you out of there in under 10 seconds. Boris? Elena repeated, surprised. Nikolai's favorite word, Dmitri said with a faint smile. Easy to remember under pressure. The restaurant was elegant in that subtle way that meant obscenely expensive. The maître d' led them to a private room in the back, where Constantine already sat with 2 men flanking him like bookends. He stood when they entered, his smile sharp. Dmitri, and the lovely Elena, how wonderful that you could join us. Constantine, Dmitri acknowledged coldly. His hand settled on Elena's lower back, possessive and protective. Shall we skip the pleasantries? Where's the fun in that? Constantine replied, but he gestured to the seats across from him. Please, sit. I've ordered wine. The meal was a masterclass in civilized threat. Constantine spoke about business, about territorial disputes, about shipments and percentages, all while his eyes kept drifting to Elena with calculating interest. She's pretty, he observed, switching to Russian mid-sentence. Does she understand what we're discussing? She understands everything, Dmitri replied in English, making it clear the conversation wouldn't be hidden from her. Ah, Constantine smiled. Then she knows that her presence here is interesting. A nanny doesn't typically attend business meetings. Elena is more than a nanny, Dmitri said quietly. Yes, I gathered that from the photograph. Tell me, Elena. Constantine addressed her directly. Do you know what kind of man you're protecting yourself with? Elena met his gaze steadily, remembering Dmitri's warning to stay silent. But something in Constantine's smug expression made her lift her chin. I know exactly what kind of man he is, she said clearly. The kind who keeps his promises. Constantine's eyebrows rose. Does he? How quaint. He leaned back. And what has he promised you? Safety? Wealth? A future? He's promised to be honest, Elena said. That's more than most men offer. Something dangerous flashed in Constantine's eyes. Honesty. How refreshing. He turned. To Dmitri. You've chosen well. She has a spine. Was there a point to this dinner? Dmitri asked coldly. Or are we here so you can make vague threats while we eat overpriced pasta? Constantine's smile widened. The point, my friend, is a proposal. I'm willing to forget certain territorial disagreements. In exchange, you step back from the Brooklyn waterfront shipments. We split the revenue 60-40 in my favor. Everyone wins. Except I lose 40% of my income, Dmitri pointed out. Consider it insurance, Constantine said smoothly, against unfortunate accidents. Things happen in our business, Dmitri. People get hurt. Children lose parents. Grandmothers in care facilities have tragic medical emergencies. Dmitri was out of his seat before Constantine finished the sentence, moving with frightening speed. His hand was around Constantine's throat, pressing him back against the booth, while Victor and Constantine's men drew weapons simultaneously. You threaten my son, Dmitri said quietly, his voice deadly calm. And I will burn everything you own to the ground. You threaten Elena's grandmother, and I will make you beg for the mercy of a quick death. Are we clear? Constantine's face had gone red, but he managed a strained smile. Clear. Dmitri released him, stepping back. The weapons lowered fractionally. Elena's heart hammered so hard she thought everyone could hear it. 3070, Dmitri said. My favor, and you never mention them again. That's my counteroffer. Konstantin rubbed his throat, eyes glittering with rage. You'd start a war over a nanny and a sick old woman? I'd start a war over principle, Dmitri corrected. But yes, touch them, and you'll discover exactly how far I'm willing to go. The silence stretched taut. Then Konstantin laughed, the sound rang in the elegant room. You've gone soft, Volkov. Love makes men weak. Fear makes them careful, Dmitri countered. And you should be very afraid right now. They left without dessert. Victor had Elena in the car before she could fully process what had happened, Dmitri sliding in beside her with controlled fury radiating off him like heat. That went well, Victor said dryly from the front seat. He won't accept those terms, Dmitri said. Which means... The explosion lit up the night behind them. Elena twisted to see flames erupting from the restaurant's kitchen, people streaming into the street in panic. Drive, Dmitri ordered calmly. Victor accelerated smoothly, 3 security cars falling into formation around them. Was that... Elena started. Insurance, Dmitri finished. Konstantin likes to end difficult negotiations with a show of force. We made sure any force he showed would be contained. He looked at her, expression hard. This is what I am, Elena. What my world is. Explosions and threats and violence that looks civilized until it's not. I know, Elena said, surprised by how steady her voice was. And you still want to stay? Elena thought. About Nikolai, waiting at home with Mrs. Orlova. About the grandmother who would be safe in her new facility. About the man beside her who'd wrapped his hand around a rival's throat to protect them both. I still want to stay, she confirmed. Dmitri's hand found hers in the darkness of the back seat, fingers intertwining. Then we do this properly. Tomorrow I make formal announcements. You're not just Nikolai's nanny. You're under the protection of my organization. Anyone who touches you answers to me. Understood? Understood. It means you can never leave quietly, Dmitri continued. Once you're in, you're in. There's no going back to your old life. I don't want my old life, Elena realized aloud. I want this one, complicated and dangerous and... Mine, Dmitri finished softly. Say it, Elena. If this is real, say it. Elena turned to face him fully, seeing the vulnerability beneath his dangerous exterior. Yours, she whispered. If you're sure you want... He kissed her then, cutting off her doubts with lips that claimed and cherished simultaneously. The kiss tasted like vodka and desperation, like finally admitting what they'd both been feeling since a crying boy had built a bridge between them. When they pulled apart, Dmitri rested his forehead against hers. I'm sure. I've been sure since I watched you speak to Nikolai in my wife's language and saw him smile for the first time in months. I was just afraid. Of what? That you'd realize what you were getting into and run. That I'd lose you before I'd even had you. That Konstantin would take you from me the way cancer took Natalia. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I'm still afraid. But I'm more afraid of not trying. Then stop being afraid, Elena said firmly, and start trusting that I know what I'm choosing. I'm choosing Nikolai. I'm choosing this complicated, dangerous life. I'm choosing you. Victor cleared his throat from the front seat. We're home, and there's a small boy pressed against the window who appears to be waiting for someone. Elena looked to see Nikolai's face in the mansion window, Boris clutched in one hand, his expression lighting up when he spotted the car. He should be asleep, Dmitri muttered, but his voice was fond. He was worried. Mrs. Orlova's voice came through the car's intercom. Wouldn't settle until he knew you were both safe. Dmitri and Elena exchanged glances. Both, Elena repeated softly. Your family now, Dmitri said simply. He knows it even if we were too stubborn to admit it. They walked into the house together, and Nikolai launched himself at them with equal enthusiasm, one arm for his father, one for Elena. You're safe, he exclaimed in Russian. I told Boris you'd be safe, but he was worried, and I was worried, and… We're safe, Elena assured him, kneeling to wrap him in a proper hug. Your papa made sure of it. Papa's the strongest, Nikolai declared proudly. Then, with the devastating honesty of children, and, you're the nicest. Together, you're perfect. Over his head, Elena caught Dmitri's eye. The look that passed between them held promise, hope, and the beginning of something neither had expected to find. That night, after Nikolai finally slept, Dmitri walked Elena to the cottage. At the door, he hesitated. I want to ask you something, he said, but I don't want you to feel pressured. Ask anyway. Move into the main house, not the cottage. With us, with Nikolai and me, and Mrs. Orlova and this entire chaotic family we're building. He took a breath, not as the nanny, as mine. Elena's heart swelled. That's moving fast. We don't have the luxury of slow, Dmitri said. Not in this world. Either you're in or you're not. And I need to know. Yes, Elena interrupted. Yes to all of it. Dmitri's smile was the most genuine thing she'd ever seen on his face. He pulled her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made tears spring to her eyes. Thank you, he whispered against her lips, for choosing us, for seeing past what I am to what I'm trying to become. You're already what you need to be, Elena assured him. A good father, an honest man, someone worth loving. Do you? Dmitri asked, vulnerability clear in his voice. Love me? Elena thought about it. The whirlwind of weeks, the danger, the complications. Then she thought about Nikolai's laughter, Dmitri's dedication, the feeling of finally belonging somewhere. I'm starting to, she admitted. Is that enough? It's everything, Dmitri said. 3 months later, Elena stood in the mansion's library, surrounded by books in Russian and English, watching Nikolai explain the constellations to his kindergarten class via video call. His English was nearly perfect now, his confidence rebuilt, his nightmares fading. Dmitri appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame with that look he got when he watched her with Nikolai. Soft, grateful, possessive. Konstantin agreed to the 30-70 split, he said quietly. He's backing off. Elena turned, surprised. Really? Why? Because he realized that trying to hurt you would cost him more than any business deal is worth. Dmitri crossed to her, hands settling on her waist. And because Victor may have quietly made it clear that certain alliances would shift dramatically against him if anything happened to you. Threats and negotiations, Elena said. Your world. Our world, Dmitri corrected. If you still want it? Elena looked at Nikolai, happily chattering about Orion's belt. Looked at the home they'd built together from grief and need and unexpected love. I still want it, she confirmed. All of it. Dmitri kissed her forehead, then her nose, then finally her lips. Good. Because I talked to the jeweler today. He's designing something special. Old Russian style, with sapphires because they match your eyes. Elena's breath caught. Dmitri. Not yet, he assured her. When you're ready. But now that I'm ready. That Nikolai's ready. That this family we've built. It's real. And I want to make it official. Elena pressed her face against his chest, breathing in his scent, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. Okay, she whispered, when I'm ready, which might be soon. No pressure, Dmitri said, but she heard the smile in his voice, Nikolai's call ended, and he ran to them, crashing into their legs with Boris tucked under one arm. "Can Elena read the bedtime story tonight, please?" "Of course," Elena said, ruffling his hair. "Which one?" "The one about the firebird," Nikolai decided. "Babushka's favorite." They settled into the reading nook together. Dmitri, Elena, and Nikolai curled between them. As Elena read in her grandmother's language, she felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was home. This dangerous, complicated, loving home. And she wouldn't trade it for anything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.